Today, we're digging into a conflict that has America caught in a really strange paradox. It's a war that seems absolutely impossible to win, but at the same time, it's also impossible to just walk away from. It's trapped one of the world's biggest superpowers in what looks like an endless stalemate.
So, let's get right into it. The big question is, why? Why is America stuck? Why can't it just win this fight? And why can't it just pack up and go home? Well, the answer isn't quite what you might expect.
Because, the real trap here, it isn't about troops or tactics on some battlefield. Nope, it's about dollars and cents, but on a massive global scale. This is really a financial crisis that's just disguised as a military one.
All right, so let's start by breaking down the incredible cost of just being stuck in this stalemate. And honestly, the numbers are just staggering.
Get this. In just the first month of this conflict, the Pentagon burned through $36 billion. And that's just the direct military spending. And when you break that down, it gets even crazier. We're talking $2 to $3 billion every single day. America has fired off years' worth of its most advanced missiles in just 1 month. Billions of dollars in super sophisticated radar systems wiped out. But look at that ripple effect. The global economic loss is a whopping $7 trillion in just 30 days.
Which of course leads to the most obvious question. If the cost is this insane, why not just cut a deal and get out? Well, this is where the trap really snaps shut.
I mean, on the surface it sounds simple, right? Just negotiate a truce, pull out the troops, and stop the bleeding. But the reality of what that negotiation would actually look like, well, it makes it a completely impossible choice for any American leader.
So, what would Iran demand? The key here is that these demands would be totally non-negotiable. First, a complete and permanent withdrawal. We're talking every base, every ship, every single soldier out of the entire Middle East. And second, hundreds of billions of dollars in reparations.
And there it is. That's the geopolitical checkmate. Accepting those terms, it wouldn't be seen as a truce or a peace deal. It would be seen as a total, humiliating surrender. The entire world would just watch America bow to Iran's demands.
But why is that perception of defeat so incredibly dangerous? To really get that, we need to pull back the curtain and look at the very foundation of the modern U.S. economy. You see, it all comes down to two fundamental pillars holding the whole thing up: the petrodollar system and what the source material here calls fear, which is basically the world's reliance on America's military power. So let's break down exactly what that means. So first, what on earth is the petrodollar? It's basically a deal, an agreement, that makes sure all major oil sales around the world happen in U.S. dollars. That means every country that needs oil, which is, let's be honest, pretty much every country, also needs a constant supply of U.S. dollars. This creates a huge, artificial demand for the currency.
And this creates this kind of brilliant, self-sustaining cycle. Here's how it works. Step 1. Gulf nations sell their oil for U.S. dollars. Step 2, they take all those profits and invest them right back into U.S. markets. Step 3, because of all this, global demand for the dollar stays incredibly high. And that leads to the crucial final step: America is able to sustain a colossal national debt.
And just how colossal are we talking? $40 trillion. That's the debt that this petrodollar cycle is helping to keep afloat. Without that constant demand for dollars, the entire system could face collapse.
So, what happens if that system actually collapses? Well, it would trigger a catastrophic global domino effect, as decades-old alliances just begin to crumble. Think about it. If America accepts a deal and pulls out of the Middle East, that pillar of fear, its military dominance, is gone. Iran would instantly become the dominant power in the region. And at that point, why would the Gulf nations keep selling their oil in U.S. dollars? The whole petrodollar system loses its entire reason for being. And this is where the dominoes really start to fall all across the globe. Over in Asia, you've got allies like Japan and South Korea, and they are watching this very closely. They see the U.S. military strained, unable to win, and they start asking a really dangerous question. Can they really protect us from a power like China? Their faith just evaporates, and they start to militarize on their own.
And, a very similar story is playing out in Europe. We're already seeing cracks in the NATO alliance. Countries you'd never expect, like Italy and Spain, are now starting to restrict American access to their military bases. The trust that held it all together is breaking down.
So let's just recap the damage. You'd have a triple collapse. The economic engine of the petrodollar, gone. The strategic alliance in Asia, gone. And the historic European alliance, gone. America's entire global power structure would be dismantled almost overnight. And this leaves America with one final, very desperate option, an option that has a truly dangerous historical parallel.
When you're backed into a corner and your financial and diplomatic power is collapsing, the only tool left in the toolbox is overwhelming military force. The last-ditch option becomes trying to win decisively on the battlefield.
But guess what? This is also a trap. It would probably start with a big strategic strike, say on Iran's Karg Island, where 90% of its oil exports come from. Then, to secure the area, you'd land Marines on the coast. But to hold the coast, you'd have to push into the mountains. And before you know it, America finds itself trapped in a massive ground war, a brutal quagmire on Iranian soil.
And if this story sounds familiar, well, it should. As this quote reminds us, this is almost exactly what happened in Vietnam. A small initial deployment of 3,000 Marines spiraled out of control into a force of 500,000 troops. And what happened in the end? America had to flee in defeat. Which brings us to our final chilling question. Trapped between an impossible peace and an unwinnable war, is America on the verge of repeating its most infamous strategic mistake? Only this time, it's not just one conflict at stake, it's the stability of the entire global financial system.